Yo, what up, fam? Thank you for joining us on Midnight Misconduct again. We will be live on 102.9 The Game and the High and Wide Hockey Network at Flyers HW on Twitter and the YouTube channel. Joined by Paul again, and for the first time, Jack, another HW alumni. Jack, send it right over to you, man. Introduce yourself. Tell the people about you.
I am Jack at HW Radio. I'm one of the founding members. Jim and I started our podcast, High and Wide, back in 2018. And yeah, it's been nonstop ever since. The network has only grown, and have you two fine gentlemen to add as always. And appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you filling in, man. We had Derek last night. Man, hope we can bring more of the HW guys on. So we hope we can include everybody. Paul, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm good. Happy to be back. Good to have you, Jack.
Thank you.
When's the next time you go up to New York to see the girl, bro?
Probably not till next week. I think she's coming into Philly this week.
Oh, no travel for you. Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
She's not a Rangers fan, is she?
No, family's actually from Detroit, so Detroit fans. But
I can live with that.
Philly. She's becoming a Philly fan.
Oh, you're converting her. Oh, perfect. Beautiful.
Yeah,
got some Eagles merch already. We're working on everything else.
You are set.
Yeah, man.
Very nice.
Welcome her to the misery.
Yeah, I know. She knows. She sees my reactions.
That's great, man.
I'm sure she's going through her own right now. But I know you talked a lot of Lions last week, so I won't get into it. But I'm sure she's going through a little bit.
Yeah, we opened the show with some Lions talk, and then Eric brought up the Lions again too, and he jumped on. We did like 10 minutes on the Lions, not Philly or hockey related. It was actually pretty good.
Gotta mix it up. We got a little bit of everything here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but so Eric came on. We were talking about the World Juniors 2018 and what's going on. Came out today that the reason that they wanted the players to surrender, including Carter Hart, was that they're officially being charged. So that changes, for me at least, it changes my opinions on how I feel things. So now they're officially being charged. They think they're guilty. This isn't like witness thing. This isn't like they were there. They want more information. They're just trying to gather stuff. They're being charged with a crime. Another thing I want to note that I saw earlier tonight, of all the statements that have come out so far, of the 5 that were ordered to surrender and being charged, Carter Hart's the only one that said it was a false allegation. Not that that he proved his innocence, but called it a false allegation. Only one of the 5 that did that. So that has me intrigued. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, we don't know. I don't know the legal technicalities, so I don't want to read too much into it. I feel like it's lawyers speak from all of them. As Eric said, they're all going to have 5 different lawyers. I think all of them made a statement or some kind of wording about defending their innocence or denying any wrongdoing. I don't know if it's anything to read into or it's just put a different way than the other ones are put. I guess optimistically, I hope it is something like that, but I tend to believe right now that they're all kind of on the same page and just saying the same thing a different way, and we'll see how they defend it in court.
Yeah, and we're hearing that there might not even be a trial until 2026. So this is going to get drug out. This isn't going away right away. The players are going away. They're not playing in the NHL. This is going to be a drug out thing, and this is going to be a black eye on hockey in general. Jack, what are your overall opinions on everything right now, though? Just a broad macro level view.
It's probably one of the worst kept secrets. I think we were all just kind of waiting for this to come down. I almost feel silly for bringing up Carter Hart potential trade rumors and whatnot, or just ideas. This was always in the back of my mind, but ultimately something was going to come to a head. It just became a lot later than we were originally told, which was supposed to be the end of July. And here we are now. And yeah, no matter what happens, he's been charged. In a way, he's already tainted, unfortunately. That's just the way it is in society. And I usually speak from a hockey Flyers perspective, and from that, it just seems like he's not going to be a Flyer. No matter what happens, they're going to have to move on. You've already alluded to how long the trial is going to take, and I thought I heard something that they have to try everybody individually, and these just I can't see a scenario where he's like completely exonerated and it's not 3-4 years down the line. So unfortunately, first and foremost, I feel like I have to say this every time we talk about it. The victim needs to get justice. Okay, let's get that out of the way. We all agree with that. We're all on the same page there. But speaking from, we cover the Flyers. This is our team. It's a lost asset at this point, as cold as that may sound. I mean, I don't see I don't even know if he'll ever play in the NHL again. I've heard that his contract he'll be on administrative leave, I believe, and then he could be terminated after that. I hear Gary Bettman may even have the power to do that himself in certain situations. So we'll see what happens. I believe it's February 5th. They're coming out on Facebook Live to really update us. I have my clock set to that. I can't wait to hear that. But no matter what happens, he's tainted. It doesn't look good. These are a lot of he said, she said. I agree with the whole lawyer speak. It did seem a little aggressive, but again, look what you're being charged with. If you truly believe you're innocent, you're going to come in swinging, So yeah, it don't look good. It really doesn't look good.
No, there's nothing good about this at all. And you touched on it, and I actually opened up yesterday's show with a pretty good speech, I thought, and I didn't do it this time. But yeah, this is a sports show. Well, obviously, there's more important things in sports. The victim getting justice, the guilty parties being apprehended, that's the number one thing. But this is a sports show. We're talking about from a hockey perspective, from a Flyers perspective. Jack said that, and anybody that's listening, we understand there's more important things in sports. This is just what we're talking about from the view, from the lens of sports. But some of the things you said, Jack, Eric touched on too. They will be tried separately because that's how it's done in Canada for sure. Like that's going to happen. And he even said, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he said that the lawyers are probably advising all the players, each player's individual lawyer, that they should be prepared to never play professional hockey again. He said something along those lines, right?
Yeah, I believe that was correct. And like we were saying, even if they do get it exonerated, or I feel like that is hard to believe at this point. Not guilty is probably more likely, if anything. But even if they do, that's a couple of years down the road, and then they're always going to be associated with it, right or wrong. And that's a tough mark to get rid of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wish I remember his name, but the punter for the Buffalo Bills, he's a former punter for the Buffalo Bills.
Punt God.
Yeah.
Matt Araiza, I think his name was.
Thank you. I'm glad you had the name there, Paul, because I couldn't remember it. But she came out and said that didn't she recant and say, no, it didn't happen? He was proved completely innocent, not guilty, like he wasn't involved, and he still can't get a job.
Yeah, I don't want to be wrong on the details of that, but that was my understanding too. That it was completely false, and yeah, he's punked out and he doesn't have a job still.
Yeah, that's wild. So you can't think that any of these players, none of them are getting called a god on ice. Hart was literally going to lose his job anyway. Regardless of this, he looked like he was getting outplayed by Erson. So even if he walks scot-free, there's a good chance he never ends up back in the league. Even if it comes out, goes, oh, he wasn't even there. He got a text message and said no. If it comes out that he was part of the group chat, hey, come to this room, he goes, no, I'm not going to be there. Right? As far-fetched as that might be, even if that's all it is, he still might not get a job.
Yeah, and let's say he were exonerated 3-4 years down the line. What kind of training is he doing in those 3 to 4 years? I mean, I'm sure he can work out and all, but it's not the same. It's different, and that's another thing to factor in.
Yeah, it's a perishable skill. Jack, your thoughts?
He's prime years of what would be of his career. And you brought up the punter. I'm thinking I think they personally, the way things are shaping up, it don't look good for them. I'm not trying to give them an out, but look at Trevor Bauer.
Right.
He's an established MLB guy.
There's another one.
Yeah, and I mean, he lost millions of dollars because of that, and he proved it. And there's still people who are just no, you're lying. Yeah. And it's because he's a weird guy. He is, but that doesn't make him guilty, And
being weird is not a crime.
No, he's just most athletes are to an extent. He's just over the top. So I mean, because he's got too much he has to battle against to even get a chance at getting back to the NHL, which is kind of crazy that this takes years like that. When you consider the athlete, his career, if she did completely make it up, Their careers are just gone. You train your entire life for this,
and you're done.
So you're done. I don't even know. I guess you can go play overseas, I guess, but it's incredible. I don't think that's the case. I don't know. I'm still standing. I'll get all the facts before I feel a certain way. We've seen how these things typically play out in the past. It don't look good, but still, like either way, they're done. And it's what are you gonna do? So that sucks.
Yeah,
it just is what it is.
It's a shame. The whole situation's a shame.
Yeah, it's all a terrible situation. But now, from a Flyers perspective, going forward, what's the goalie situation look like? Like, what do we think about now? Erson got beat up a little bit lately. People were getting ready to crown him before all this came out and Hart left the team. He didn't look all that great, but I think, and we all said this last night, that no team needed this all-star break more than the Flyers. They needed to get away from the rink, this whole team. They were worn down. They were tired. Erson's a human being too. So I think that's where we start. Overall thoughts on Erson. Jack, we'll go with you first, man.
I think he's been fantastic up to this point. I think everything with Hart hit. I think Tippett got hurt. I think the team is just hitting a little bit of a downward spiral. They also got lit up by like premier NHL talent in Kucherov, McKinnon, and in Boston, Pasta. Yeah, I mean that's going to take its toll. I mean, he's still a young guy. He's seeing some bumps along the way, and that's why I love that Torts had a little chat on the bench with him when he slapped him in the chest. He's a young guy. This is going to happen. I think he's in a better situation than Hart was when he first came up, and he's just going to have to learn how to handle it, and that's fine. I think he's ahead of the curve anyway. I'm not too worried, at least not yet. I'm a big on sample size, and I've seen a lot more good Ersan than I've seen bad. And just to the rest of the goaltending carousel of the pipeline, we have plenty who's been drafted, although that could take a long time. But, Cole, I just said his name right on the last podcast. The Russian goalie who could come over seasons.
I screw up names all the time and just stop even bother trying to fix it. Like, I just say it however I say it.
I had to stop drinking because I was really struggling when I was trying to say it. Kolzov? Am I saying it right?
Kolzov?
Yeah. Is he able to? I think his season's ending. I read something he could come over or something of that nature. Whether it's this year or next, he'll be in the mix. Peterson right now is a situation where he can go up and go down, which works. It ain't nobody claiming that contract. And I was kind of already out on Sandstrom, but for now he's just a body. So let's get through this season and we'll see we'll see who's coming in the offseason and whatnot. And I still think we're in pretty decent hands. I'm not ready to pull the plug and freak out or anything like that. So, he's having it's a little bit of a rough patch. I'll go with that for now. And I think it's not just him. I think it's the whole team.
No, that's solid. And Paul, you mentioned before when we talked that the most popular athletes in any city are the backup quarterback and the backup goalie. So now it's on him. So what do you come out of this All-Star break? What are your expectations and what are your predictions? What do you think is going to happen in the second half of the season?
Yeah, I'm hoping he gets back on track. He's a guy that I liked as a prospect too. He put up some good numbers in Sweden. There was one year he had some mediocre numbers, but if I remember, he was on like the worst team in the league. And I think he was something like 50 points better than the backup goalie in save percentage still. So he was still playing pretty well, all things considered. He's a hard one to evaluate fully because like he looks good. He looked good at times last year, and then you look at his numbers at the end, and they're average, low 900 save percentage. It kind of seems to be like a thing of runs with him. Like he goes on a little bit of a cold streak, and then he looks great for 15 games or so. Hopefully the greatness is more consistent as he develops and gets older. I think it probably will. I think, like Jack said, there's a lot of things going on with the team and tiredness. And I know last year he broke down a little bit in the playoffs, being played a little bit too much. So it'll be interesting to watch this rest of the season with that and Cal Peterson, the backup. I'm not sure Cal Peterson will be everybody's favorite, as we talked about the backup goalie being everybody's favorite. That'll be tested with Cal, but I think Ersan will solidify it a little bit. He'll right the ship a bit. I would expect a couple down games. He's a young goalie, and the team still doesn't have the most talent in the world, but they'll play hard for him, and I think he'll get back on track.
I mean, Peterson's not without talent. Like, he was a first round pick, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly, right? Like, at some point, like, some people thought highly of him. So, I mean, it's not, and he's not old. He's 24, 25.
I think he's a
No,
little bit
he's
older than that.
29.
Yeah.
Is he really?
Well, I mean, somebody had to
I
sign
don't-
him to that
I don't-
deal, right?
That's true. I didn't
Yeah,
think he was
thing.
that
I don't
old.
think he was a first round pick, but he did have one. I think he had a season and a half, like a very good production, and got signed to a big deal. I thought he might be able to bounce back a little bit with the trade, like a change of scenery, get back into form, because he obviously had the talent for a little bit there. But as far as I remember, his numbers with the fans are pretty poor this year too. So I'm not too optimistic with it.
So he's probably just washed then, is what you're saying?
Hope not, but it seems like it.
He's just
Yeah, it is
done.
what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
go, Jack.
I mean, we're not in a situation where we're like, we need to win. So I'm not too, it's not even the worst thing in the world that the team's going in a downward spiral. There's people saying like, oh yeah, we had somebody in our chat say like, or on our show to trade for, what's his name from the Sharks? Anthony Duclair. I'm like, I don't think he's coming to Philly. We should be selling. We should be selling Walker. I don't know who else you can sell. I'm not going to sell guys just for the sake of doing it. But like, I'm not too, at the same time, I'd rather, if the team does go on a little bit of a downward spiral, we could get a better draft pick, that was the assignment at the beginning of the year. So like, I haven't forgot that. And even next year, I'm not hoping they don't just, are terrible. I like to see growth with these young players, but Peterson's nothing. It's a contract at this point. He's going to go out. The only thing I like about him is he won't get claimed if you have injuries and you need to bring him up. I hope he's not up. I hope we have somebody else in there. Maybe they win a job out of camp as a backup or whatever. But he can go up and down, and nobody's claiming that contract. And we're just going to wait it out. It's only one more year. Not too concerned with that. But Ersan, I am really hoping that, kind of out of necessity now, that he does take that role, because I don't think the other guys are anywhere near ready to even back up at this point. We'll see going into next year, but it's his net to lose. And seems like the team has his back. I don't think I feel like I've already heard Torts, and Jimmy said this, speak more highly of Ersan a little bit, like little tells, not throwing him under the bus several times. This game's not on him. And then the pep talk on the bench, he's telling him, this is not on you. Like, this shit happens. So we'll see how they handle it. And, he's going to go through this even when they're trying to win. So might as well get a little taste of it now, see how he responds.
So, even last year, it seemed like Torts was hyping him up a couple times in that stretch he had late in the season. Seemed like Torts was a fan of his pretty early on.
That's what Jimmy pointed out not that long ago. He was saying that, yeah, he was saying that, and it's true. And it was more so a point like, I didn't really notice that too much with Hart, almost like the Flyers knew something, like it was a tell. And either way, it's a good sign for Ersan. He's our guy going forward 100%. And I think he's in a much better situation with the roster and the management and the front office than Hart was when he first came up.
Jack, you mentioned that you'd be okay with a little bit of a downward spiral because, as you put it, the assignment was to get a good draft pick this year. Does that mean you wouldn't be disappointed if we don't make the playoffs? Like we were sitting two in the Metro, just a couple points out of first place, and now you'd be okay if we don't make the playoffs after the second half of the season?
I would live. Look, it's fool's gold. Yeah, I could actually at one time I could see them making the playoffs and even beating Carolina in the first round. That's what it looks like at the time. But I'm just like, that's fun and good, dandy, but I don't see them going on a run. I don't see anything like that happening.
What was the last year we were in the Stanley Cup Finals?
2010.
What was our playoff position seeding in 2010?
I believe we were the 7th seed, and we won by winning a shootout. However, we were predicted to go to the Cup entering that season.
Yeah, look at the talent on that team.
Claude Giroux was a third line center on that team. Yeah. So
Boucher won all 5 games that year as one of 3 goalies we used. Not a single goalie had a shutout that season either.
You know who started the season as goalie? You know who started? Yeah, exactly. Like, he didn't even make it to the playoffs. Yeah,
I heard Mike Richards say the other day that if I I don't know if he said it the other day or I saw it the other day. If he believes if Ray Emery stayed healthy, they would have won the cup that year.
It's definitely possible. I mean, they were ridiculous. And yeah, they also had this guy, Chris Pronger. He's pretty good. Yeah. So
yeah, the top four was Coburn, Carl, Tiemann, Pronger.
Tiemann and Coburn as your second pairing. I would die for that today. My God. And then Pronger, Jesus, Mary, Joseph. My God. I couldn't. Somebody asked me to name who that third pairing was. I could not remember. And
I think Bartulis and Ryan Perrant, I think, or Parent.
Was it Tony O'Donnell on that team?
I thought Perrant went in the a trade we made with, I want to say either Nashville or Atlanta at the time. I don't even know if he made it. I can't remember.
I'm not sure. I would think Bartulis
makes sense.
Was on it.
But like I also heard they didn't play all that much. They were playing like,
I was gonna say, I think they played them like 9 minutes.
Yeah, they were rocking the top four that whole run. Yeah,
I love it. I love every second of that. But like
that third pair was killer though in the finals. They got exposed big time.
Well, as did the goaltending.
Yeah.
So I hear you. I love the optimism, Dave, but I'm such a realist, and Paul, you're a numbers guy, so you know I'm right here. The odds, like,
I'm with you.
Their first round, they get out of the first round, it's hunky dory. But I'm looking at they have to address some needs, and I love Drysdale, but I don't really know if he's a number one guy right now. And there's a lot of good D coming out in this draft.
I'm forever an optimist. Like that's all I ever can be. Like I go into every season like, all right, we're gonna go win. Like that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go win, regardless of the situation, the scenario. Every time I want to go in and go win. I understand where you guys are coming from, though. I'm not against the rebuild. I'm not completely delusional. I get it, but I don't know. I'm hungry for playoff hockey. Paul, you're not hungry for playoff hockey, even if it's one series.
I was going to say, you're not going to see me complain if they make the playoffs. I'm going to be trying to get tickets. I'm going to be rooting for them. I miss playoff hockey very much. It's nothing like playoff hockey. Especially, Philly playoff games are so much fun. And, yeah, I'm pretty starved for it, so you're not going to see me complain. But the realist part of me does agree with Jack as well. It probably helps us long-term a little better if it does start going off the rails a little bit. But it's been a fun year. I'm not going to complain of where they're at, and decent part of me does hope they get back on track here and stay in the hunt. But it's kind of a win-win in that way.
Well, I was at the Dallas game where Tippett had the spin around backhand, and like that was one of the most fun I've had at a Flyers game in quite some time. So I'm definitely on board with that. If this team were to and they won't do this, but if they were to trade a second or a third and add like a player to go for a playoff run, I would be furious. I would come on my pod and I would roast them. I'd also be first in line to buy tickets to the playoffs. It just is what it is. That's how I am. I watch the game. I cheer from the win. I know the assignment, but I can't help myself. It is what it is. But what my point when it comes to a rebuild, there's you look at the teams and some of them have completely bottomed out. I get that, but it's more about building a solid foundation to build off of. I like the Washingtons, the Pittsburghs, the Chicagos. I don't, as much as I like the team, I don't want to be like a St. Louis Blues where you sneak in, you're in dead last at the trade deadline or All-Star break, and you fire your coach and turn things around. And then, you have this hoping for lightning in a bottle is not the best way to get sustained success. I'd rather be Washington where they're knocking on the door for years and they finally break through and get it. Sure. Would I prefer to be Pittsburgh where there are more cups and they win more cups? Of course. I just want one. Well, we'll talk about the other ones once we get the first one, so the only way that you can do that is if you're constantly in the playoffs and you're constantly there and you're a regular and you break through. That's typically how we see it with most teams. And the only way to be that team is to have a solid foundation you keep adding to. You do things right with the contracts. You do things right with drafting. You don't make stupid trades, things of that nature. And the only way to do that is to add through the draft. And we have a huge leg up with Michkov. Losing Hart and not being able to trade for, that could have been a great asset to move up in this draft or whatever. But we got really lucky with Michkov as well. So I look at that. I love what Briere's doing so far. pretty tough year one for Briere, would you say? Between Hart, Gauthier, trading Provorov, dealing with the previous regime, and how that reflects on this team. I gotta say, I give the guy a pretty, if not an A plus, an A for how he's handled things in year one.
Oh, I think Briere is absolutely crushing it right now, Paul.
I was going to say, it was something I was thinking about earlier when Jack mentioned Carter Hart being a lost asset. We know there were rumors in the offseason of them looking to move Carter Hart or being pretty close to move Carter Hart. Obviously, we assume it fell apart because teams knew he was under investigation. I've been wondering if they were to have pulled the trigger on a move, would that have come back to hurt Briere with him being a charge now?
Oh, like a bad faith kind of deal thing.
Yeah.
That's tough. I don't know what information was available at the time. Cause like we had said, like it was closed in 2019, but they reopened it. It's like, okay, well, I have to still run my organization here, you know?
Yeah. I mean, this offseason, I feel like it was kind of back under the spotlight, to the point where I'm thinking if he did get traded and then these popped up, it'd be like, you probably knew something about this and he still moved them to us.
It's tough. It's tough. It's kind of like at what point does, if he was straightforward with most of what he had, what he's allowed to share, but the other organization, you know, they can't be, they're probably not completely blind to it, you know?
Right.
So if you're trying to make connections around the league, it doesn't really look too good. But at the end of the day, go ahead.
Especially like his first year doing it, he made the Provorov trade, and then his next big trade would be Carter Hart. It's like your first steps are possibly creating bad ties.
Yeah. At the same time, it absolutely could. And I guess I'm glad it didn't, because I love how things have set up right now. Same time, you know, he just became the GM. He's got to make moves. He wants to turn things around and get certain people out of the locker room and get assets he needs to. If you can make an argument, you look at his goaltending depth, I guess you could call it, and be like, look, I don't want to pay this guy. I have to move on. Here's the deal. You know about the first investigation. This is coming up. You still want to talk turkey? Hey, you know. So I think if there's a certain respect, a certain forthcoming, you don't like completely hide, you know, I think you could have gotten around it. I think that's why teams were just too smart and just like, look, we don't like where this is at. And it just is what it is. I actually thought he was traded the same day Provorov was. That was some of the reporting I had seen. I just didn't see any returns. I was pretty convinced. I texted people thinking, yeah, Hart's gone too. What'd they get for him? I don't know.
There were a couple of tweets. Yeah. I forget exactly who. I want to say one was, I'm thinking a Blues Reporter, but maybe I'm just thinking that because of the Torrey Krug stuff. But yeah, I saw the same things. There were some tweets like very quickly after the Provorov deal that was like, looks like Hart might be gone too. Just never materialized.
Yeah, I was really curious what they were going to get back and where he was going to go.
Yeah.
But yeah,
if Briere was open about everything the way you're saying, I would imagine it would have muted the return a bit, and then Flyers fans would have been furious.
That's true too. Yeah, that's something too. I don't know. It is what it is. It sounds like we're getting
a hard place on a lot. He was caught between a rock and a hard place with a lot of things this year.
Yeah.
But I genuinely think that Briere and Jonesy have so much respect across the league that people are just dealing with them straight up. And I would assume that they're doing the same way. Like, I know he's a first-time GM and all that stuff, but they seem like they had their finger on the pulse of a lot of things right now. Like, I can't really criticize any moves they've made.
No, there's nothing that's been done that I really have an issue with unless I'm forgetting something, and I don't think I am. I know people question some of their off-season signings. I haven't really had an issue with any of that. I don't know if you want to get into it now, but like I was just about to talk about Paling, who they just re-upped for 2 years. 2 years, 1.9 mil. I don't have an issue with that. He's same draft class as Frost, so it's not like he's an older guy. I know they have Garnett Hathaway for another year. A lot of people thinking is at the end of Lawton. I would only say if they get something juicy for him. I don't think they're going to move him for the sake of moving him. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that deal?
I'm okay with it. I think it's a good deal. We touched on it a little bit. We only touched on the Tippett one, I think, last night. It's really talk about. But yeah, no, I mean, I thought both those signings when they came out were good deals. But no, Paul, go ahead.
No, I like it. Yeah, like you said, I think Paling's been a nice fit. Only 24. He was first round pick. Probably not gonna quite live up to that. I think he had a hat trick in his debut, pulling off the Matthews. Had hat trick in a shootout game winner, I think.
Jeez.
He has some skill, but there's times where he's such a good skater, which is very welcomed in this lineup. So I feel like sometimes his hands can't quite keep up with his feet there. But as a bottom six energy guy, I think he's awesome, and I got no problem him being around for another 2 years, and who knows, maybe more after that. Doesn't make Lawton expendable. Last year I probably would have said no. I feel like they were slightly different, but Lawton, unfortunately, I've been a big fan of him for a long time, but he's been pretty bad out there this year. And from what we've seen this year, Paling can do what he's been doing, no problem. But we'll see. I agree with Jack. I think it would have to be something juicy for them to move him. Probably. I don't think they're just gonna try to get rid of him. He's part of their culture too. I think Tortorella likes having him there. He's a pro and plays hard, cares about the teammates and all. What do you think, Dave?
Do we think? Well, I was going to ask. Do we know what's going on with Lawton? Like, has there been any rumblings there? Or anything? Like, is there any reason for the drop off in play?
I haven't heard anything. No injuries, nothing like that. It could just be one of those things. I don't know. Seems like they might have missed the boat on trading him. I'm not 100% sure how accurate the first round pick offer was. I've heard both sides. I don't think it's beneficial if they were to just flip him for a third, honestly, because of the culture he brings. And he's got I think after this year, he's got 2 more years of $3 million. Even with his bad season, the teams are interested. Like I heard Dallas was interested. They described the player they needed for their lineup. Like it's like gritty veteran leadership and could play throughout the lineup. Like that's a lot, I mean, I'm sure there's other players like that, but like he really checks that box. So I almost feel like he might be a better next year trade deadline or off season, something like that. I wouldn't trade him just for the sake of getting rid of him, especially if the team's going through a downward spiral. You're going to want as many veterans there as you can get. But yeah, the change in play is definitely concerning just because I thought we could get, you could get a first for a guy. And now you're just like, yeah,
can we get anything for him?
Yeah. Is it even worth it? Like I'm sure that if you wanted to, you could make a trade, but like, why just make a trade for the sake of making a trade?
Yeah.
You don't have cap issues. You're not really doing anything in the next 2 years, except for maybe that final year getting something together. And by then, guys are expiring deals. It'll be easier to move.
Well, you see that every year at the trade deadline. The guys that are on expiring deals, that's always, the easier trade to make. Nobody wants to get strapped with a contract. But no, Lawton's a fascinating one. But you brought up, with what we're going through, who do we think is still going to be here in 2-3 years? Like when this team is hopefully, hypothetically, on the upswing, who are we looking at that's going to be a part of that not to say the old regime, but has been holdovers from the past, 4, 5, 6 years? Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the core, we have Tippett locked up now. Hopefully Forster takes steps. I've really liked watching Forster play, but obviously he was first round pick billed as this shooter, big offensive guy. So I'm sure they're going to, we all want to see a little more there. I think it'll come. I'm not too worried about him. I think everything else in his game has been spectacular. That I'm just enjoying his development of his two-way game and his defense, and figure his shot's good enough. And he's produced his whole career. He'll figure out a way to start scoring some more goals. So Forster and Tippett, I think Frost is probably the hot topic one. That he could, if he keeps developing and can somehow become a 2 center, that'd be huge for us. If he's a 3 center, I don't know if they'll want him to be that or not. So he's an interesting one. I guess Couturier would still be here as the veteran. I think ideally on a contending team, he'll be 34, 35 at that point. You probably want him at least on the second line at that point. So they still need to find that 1 center. And then the defense at least is getting there with Drysdale and York. Sanheim. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think Atkinson will. I wonder if he'll be moved this year. Do you think there's any chance he'll be moved at the deadline this year or off season maybe?
Me personally, 5.8, that's a lot of money. I don't think he gets moved to the deadline. Off season potentially. I think it'll be next deadline next year. That makes the most sense. Expiring deal. Especially if he gets, he starts scoring more consistently. He had such a rough year, really, and just only kind of came around recently. I can't, with all the other options out there, I can't see a team this season getting that on their cap for next year. Even the offseason seems like a stretch. But yeah, I mean, if he can get something going next year, he's got a veteran guy who can score, who can play on your penalty kill, make things happen. Let's see how he ages. But nothing this year. I think you're stuck with him for the rest of this year and potentially next year.
How much more appealing do you think he is than JVR was last year?
I think he's got more to his game than JVR does. The thing is so weird because JVR's looked so good this year with Boston. So it's like, is it a where is he? If you put him on a team like that, how's he going to look? So the only thing is he had all that neck issue stuff, and JVR didn't have any of that stuff. So a lot of it's going to be the medicals with me. It's going to have to be the right team. I guess they were making around the same money, right? JVR was $5 million, $7 million. He was $7 million.
Yeah. He was, I think he was 5 by 7 by Hextall was the deal.
Yeah.
But it was a no trade clause was the big thing. They didn't have any trade or movement clause on him.
Yeah. And it was the last year of his deal too. Still shocked he didn't get moved. But yeah, I don't know. That's why I don't, with the extra year, it's almost like it's out for me. That's also why I don't think Risto gets moved at all. And that's even more years, obviously. Just
Risto,
knowing how
I could
teams
see a little more just because he's younger. What was he, 5 or 6 years younger than Atkinson? So I think teams they could think about re-signing him when that deal's up and having him a little longer term, his play not falling off like Atkinson's could, never know, fall off at any point.
You see Risto's more as
so
off season, or
probably it just feels like contending teams rarely add guys with pretty high AAVs, but I just feel like he would have a better shot than Atkinson of being an in-season trade. But at the same time, I'm sure they'd be willing to eat Atkinson's cap a little bit.
Part of me is intrigued. I've heard so much about playoff Risto, yet I've never seen it. So I would love to see.
You can see that's where the optimism is, Jack. That's why you're optimistic.
I won't complain.
Playoff Risto this year.
Oh, you mean with the Flyers? I meant with anybody else. So I mean, I won't complain. That's for sure. Yeah, that's.
Do you think they'll move Risto, or are open to moving Risto?
I thought I would have before they added Drysdale. Now that they have, I'm kind of like, I don't see why not. I feel like, what's he making? 5.1 or 5.2?
It's definitely 5 something, yeah.
And it's for like another, after this year, it's another 3 years, another 4 years. This is that 1 year I always forget.
3.
It's at least 3. And I'm just like, he's a hell of a third pairing defenseman. Yeah, but it's like,
but he's paid like a hell of a second pairing defenseman.
Exactly. And he's capable of stepping up, and if the other guy carries him or whatnot. And he does have that grittiness to him, but I'd just rather just go a different direction. That's what it comes down to, especially if I can get some kind of asset.
Yeah, I mean, he's improved. I like when he came in, I was expecting him to be quite bad. He's bad in Buffalo pretty much his whole career. And he was pretty bad at the beginning of his tenure, but he did turn it around. And I've been, pretty pleased with his play overall, but at the same time, he's still not. He was drafted like 7th overall, top 10, I think. He's still, in my opinion, a third pair defenseman, maybe a number 4. And he's just paid way more than that. So if they could move him, I would love to move him. He does his job fine. He's just overpaid to do that job, and I'd rather them go a different direction.
There's no need to either. You're in a we're in a rebuild. So there's no reason to force him out of here or eat money, or I don't want to do anything like that. But if some team came along and offered you something, plus some team comes and snags Brad Shaw, I mean, I'm going to have to get rid of some of these defensemen I don't like. Hopefully they retain what they've learned and he doesn't have to stay there. But I don't know, Aristo. Yeah. I really don't. So it's one of those things. If I can get out of it now and get an asset, not eat any money, then why? I just don't know how feasible that is. But there's no rush. Like, what are we doing next year, the year after that? Really, it's all to Mishkov's here. And I want to have some money when certain players hit free agency as well. I don't know if that's the same year or not, but there's a lot of most of them probably won't make it there, obviously. But I still want to have some money for that offseason, especially for center, because I don't know how they're unless they go crazy with a trade or really hitting a draft. I don't know how they're fixing that one.
You could probably trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah. Talk about, that'll be great for the culture. I think that Doughty was talking about him specifically the other night.
I would imagine, yeah.
He said everything but say his name. So
Tim Peel and Roenick were talking about him too on their Stripes and Snipes podcast too.
Yeah. Do you guys know how I feel about entitled players? I don't know if you've heard a couple of my rants about Cutter. Yeah, I have a feeling about these guys. So, that's how I feel about that trade. That acquisition.
It's old Cutter stuff is almost like old news now with everything that's been going on. But that really is the level of arrogance it takes to blow off the alumni like that and the GM in the front. Like that is this different kind of level of arrogance. That's incredible to me to just be like, yeah, no, I'm not going to talk to you.
It's a new age asshole. I mean, I'm sorry, athlete. New age athlete. By the way, we allowed to curse at all? Sorry.
You're good, Jack.
All right. I brought him up. It's my own fault. But yeah, I mean, and then Jurek with Columbus we were just talking about. Like, I mean, did he say anything else besides having issues not playing on the power play?
Not that I saw.
Yeah, I don't even know if he complained about not being on the power play or if he was just saying that other guys in his draft class were getting power play opportunity and he wasn't even getting NHL opportunity.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. People made it sound like he was, and I didn't read into it, almost as not as much, but like along the Gauthier lines. And I was like, is it really that bad? Like, I know he just get sent down.
Yeah, I didn't think it was.
He also did say that he was okay being there. He was like, he's like, there's great coaches, great teammates. Okay. We're winning. It's fun to play hockey. So he did just criticize, like Paul said. He's like, there's other players that are doing this, other players that are doing that in my draft class. And he's like, I'm not getting the opportunities to do that. Like he wasn't playing enough. He wanted to go out there. He felt he could compete. But at the end, he did say that he was. I think it's Cleveland they were at. That's the AHL team. He's like, I'm happy to be here in Cleveland. Like the coaches are great here. The team's winning. The players are great. So he ended it on a positive note.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think it was that nearly as bad. I mean, we'll see how it goes, but he was a little frustration, and there probably is an argument that he has played well. I mean, he hasn't been dominating or anything, but he's been an NHL player. So it feels like there's a little bit of an argument to be made that the team stinks. You might as well keep developing him in the NHL, but who knows?
Yeah, I was a fan. I was a fan of his in that draft class. The reason I asked, though, if he was going along those lines, 2022, I'm going to mark that year as the entitled prick year. It seems the same draft class as Cutter. I was going to keep that one in mind. I really hope that's not the case. Paul, I know you love the draft. I love the draft. If these guys start doing this stuff, it's going to ruin the draft. If it becomes more consistent, it's going to change things. It really is. I'm jumping the gun, but this is where it starts.
The new athlete is tough.
No, that's it. That's an interesting topic right there. The changing landscape and players coming into the draft like that. We've seen in the NFL a lot where players are like, "Oh, I'm not going to play for that team. I refuse to play for the team," or "This is what I want." How demanding do you think it could get in the NHL with that stuff? Like, if they know if they think Columbus is just a trash organization and they know they could go number 1 overall, would they be like, "Listen, if Columbus drafts me, I'm not playing. Like, I'll go somewhere else." Like.
I really hope not. That would be so bad for the league. And it's even I wasn't even it's not the worst thing in the world, but I wasn't even the biggest fan of Matthew Kachuk, like, yeah, I'm not resigning here. Things of that nature. It's like, geez, what didn't it used to be like a pleasure to play in the NHL? And I can understand it. You gave the franchise a chance. You played. Maybe there's things that I don't know about, whatever. But you haven't played a second. Everything until now has been an audition for the NHL, and you're gonna. Not only did you demand a trade because you were essentially told you had to prove you could play in the NHL, you then ghost the team and disrespect Stanley Cup winners and some of the best American-born players of all. I mean, that is so. I am so blown away by that I cannot believe that kind of player exists. And it's not just him; it's the people surrounding him. It's everybody's telling him a bunch of yes men, probably his own parents. You're the greatest. You can do whatever you want. That's ridiculous to me. I can't wait till he asks for a trade out of Anaheim.
Yeah. So Theo Fleury, we had him on one time, and he talked about how coddled and spoiled these players are coming up. Like he's like, I'm hearing stories about stars like they're 14, 15 years old and they're getting their own dressing room. They're not even changing with the team because like they're that good and the team wants them that bad. So their parents make that demand and they get it. So that's what we're dealing with. Like that's what's going on at the middle school, high school level. Players are told they're that good, they're better than everybody else, that they get their own dressing room.
That sucks. That absolutely
I'd
sucks.
say like that sets a precedent and like sets them up for failure down the road, but at the same time it's becoming so normal that like, it's happening so much now that it's just kind of the way it is almost now, which is awful. In a similar wave, I think it's commendable to Torts is one of the rare, I don't even know if I can name another example off the top of my head of being an old school style coach but still being able to adapt with changing times of the game. Obviously he made the comments last year about the Michigan attempt, or not last year, whatever, 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm sure he has some old school thoughts that maybe even holds back at times. But he has the players still like him. There's some new age players there that he's working with, and I feel like he's gotten results again. He's found a way to adapt his style enough to make it work with new athletes, which is impressive.
Yeah, no, Torts has been great, man. No, go ahead, Jack. You're about to say something.
I'm just going to agree. I love Torts.
Yeah.
I wanted him. I had a feeling that team was going to overachieve with him. I think we all did. But as far as a development standpoint, I was huge on Torts. I really am glad that they wound up getting him over some of the other. I'm not saying anybody else would have been bad or anything. I just felt where the team was, what they needed to do through a rebuild, that he was the guy. And he's showing that. Like, we've been very few prospects who I've been disappointed in. And most of them didn't have a good camp and really haven't played for the Flyers this year. So that's more of a Lehigh Valley issue. So
there's been some guys, or I'm sure there's guys that don't like him or wouldn't like him. And he may be like a bully at times and a little bit, but I feel like every young player would benefit having him as a coach early in their careers.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah, what I like best about him is that he still wants to win. And I think it's not talked about, or it's either talked about too much, not talked about enough at times. But you can't just go into a rebuild, I think, just selling off assets, losing for a bunch of years, acquiring draft picks, and be like, oh, now we're going to go win. I genuinely think that a loser mentality can set in. There's a reason that franchises for years are stuck just being garbage franchises. So the fact that we are in a rebuild, but we're competing the way we are, tells me that there's a standard that's set and that winning is the standard. We're going to go out there, we're going to play to win, regardless of how the chips are stacked against us, whether we're the most talented or not. Nobody's going to outwork us out there. So I like that being instilled during a rebuild. Not just losing for losing sakes to get picks and get cap room, but actually establishing a culture and a foundation that, hey, we're going to play to win the game. So that's what I like best about Torts.
I agree.
Right.
I think that was one of the biggest issues in the Hextall era. I think there is a world where you could have seen Giroux and Voracek successful, but I think that, especially in Voracek's case, they spent so much time not adding to the team. And, he did get rid of some bad contracts, but the biggest free agent they'd have some year would be Jesus Christ. What was
Dale Weiss.
Dale Weiss. Yeah, it's exactly what I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
Dale Weiss. I'm like,
that was
in 4 years.
Signing. Yeah, really. Yeah.
I'm like, what? That's what we came. And then he almost signed JVR begrudgingly. like because the fans were getting
Yeah,
too
he was like mad.
mouthy.
Yeah, it was. It was almost like he was mad about. Like, all right, they want me to do something. Like, okay, this is what we're going to do.
I think that's why it was also $7 million a year for only 5 years. I think the deal would have been a little bit different if he wasn't trying to make it work to his plan. And I was all for drafting and all those things, but it's like he didn't do the other things that I felt he needed to do to make that turn that thing around faster. I was like, how you re-signed Drew and Voracek in back-to-back seasons, and then you just didn't do anything else for the current squad. I mean, you could even bring somebody in and flip them at the deadline if things don't work out. I don't understand why there was parts of that made no sense to me, but because of how he went about it with other things, that loser mentality definitely set in. That's where the whole, what do they call it? Golf club or whatever.
Country club.
Country.
Atmosphere.
Thank you. Yeah. Country club atmosphere set in. And it's like, hey, we're playing who tonight? That doesn't matter. We're all getting paid. And it really felt that way. Like in certain ways, certain players played for sure. And I'm not going to say Drew. He always left it all on the ice. But we know the leadership in the locker room is a group of players. It's not just one guy. And if you have high quality guys with that mentality, how do you break out of that? You don't just bring in Fletcher, start bringing in players and whatnot, and pull it together. I think that's why 2019 was such in my opinion, an anomaly. And because when things get tough, they don't care. They can't pull it together. They're so used to it. They're not affected by losing. It doesn't bother them. And guys like Dale Weiss, who was in the same locker room as whatever I need to think of the guy's name, it always slips my mind. Shea Weber, there's a massive difference in how things are said. Now, I don't think he would come into this locker room today and even come remotely close to saying anything like that. And that ultimately was the more important thing with what needed to happen culture-wise. And then the talent comes with that. And I think we're seeing it earlier than I ever anticipated.
Yeah, well, I think with the big three we have in charge right now, just Keith Jones, Danny Briere, and Tortorella, like I think those are the three guys you want establishing the direction of an organization. Like I have faith in the big three right now. That's I guess what I'm saying. I mean, I can't poke too many holes in anything that they're doing.
I love him.
I think Keith Jones was a massive hire. I feel like a lot of people criticize it just because I was another former player. What experience does he have? The connections and the relationships are just huge, and I think it's already pretty obvious that he's a home run hire.
And he gets the number one thing they needed to do was and they're doing it. They're so transparent with the fan base. Where the previous front office was an absolute joke. I'm sorry, people want to defend Jim's girl Valerie, and but one of the first things she did when and I bring this up all the time because it's so unbelievable to me. Well, first off, they split the logo, which Schneider was like, but really, she said something along the lines of, and I always butcher it, whatever changes they were making, it was like, well, Flyers fans are going to have to get used to it. I'm sorry. What effing outsider comes here and tells us what we have to get used to? Is that a joke? She's from the Washington Nationals, and she's going to come in here and say that? I'm like, are you trying to piss everybody off? And you saw how everything crumbled after that. Yep. And sure enough, she was originally with the big three, and she lasted a couple of weeks, and boop, she's out. All for the best. And we've heard that people didn't want to go to work with her there. They hated going to work with her. Completely different now. Completely, that's how it should be. It was like a family when Schneider was there. Every year he was there, it was a family atmosphere. Hextall did damage to that. I'm not going to lie. Hextall did damage to that, and the front office that followed that just made it even worse. And we're finally coming out of that. So it's a locker room culture. It's a front office culture. It's a fan base culture. We're behind everything this team does now. It was never like that. They couldn't even get the right guy who passed away from the equipment manager from the 70s and put a random picture up there, misspell the guy's name. I'm like, are you guys even trying anymore? This is embarrassing. And now everything's squeaky clean. They acknowledged Snyder's birthday. Mark Recchi's Hall of Fame induction was great. It's night and day difference. And this one season alone for the locker room, for the front office, for things of that nature, it's another one up for Briere and Keith Jones, as you mentioned, for this organization. And for that alone, the future is bright.
So I'm not gonna lie, that's actually a very great transition right there. Because I was about to bring, we're winding down. We, got about 5 minutes left. I was gonna go into the soapbox segment. I was gonna give the soapbox to Jack Ferks actually, but I feel like he just did it. I feel that there's no need to even put him back up on the soapbox. Let him go. He just went off and got it all off his chest right there. But I'll go to Paul first and let him get up on his soapbox. And Jack, if you want to catch your breath, calm down a little bit, and if you have another topic, we'll give it right back to you. All right, but Paul, go ahead. You're on the soapbox, man.
First time with soapbox. I don't know where to go with this. We keeping it hockey or going anything
on soapbox is whatever you want. You can go any way you want here.
Let's go back to the Lions. Lions talk. Turn it to football. I don't know. You guys follow football closely besides the Eagles? Yeah. I think it's cool news today. The offense coordinator for the Lions is coming back to Detroit. I feel like more coordinators should. I don't know if it's an ego thing. I've been having this conversation lately with a couple of my buddies. I think it's a smart move for coordinators to come back if they're in a situation like that instead of what he goes to. I mean, maybe Commanders turn it around, but he goes to a bad team, wins 5 games, and never gets a head coaching job again. I think it's a good move for coaches to stay in a cushy position like that, keep winning, and who knows, maybe. I mean, it's obviously great for Detroit and their fans, but I'd be cool if we see a little more of that.
Yeah, man, I agree with you. I think he could set himself up for great success next year for a head coaching job. No need to go to Seattle or Washington and take, the leftovers from this coaching hire, man. So I like it. All right, Jack, you got some more in you, Jack? Do you got something else in you?
I'll just piggyback a little bit. As a dynasty league owner and recent draftee of Sam Laporta, I couldn't agree more with that. I got him locked in.
Making it very personal, very self-serving.
I got a lot of Laporta. I'm with you. That could be part of the reason I like it too.
I mean, it's a 16-man league. I got him with a 2nd-round pick. I look like a freaking genius right now. I mean, you're talking about the tight end position. It's phenomenal. I love every second of it. I might get a jersey. But speaking of keeping coordinators, how about we keep an assistant head coach? I'm on the Bradshaw train. Let's lock him down. Don't give him a head coaching job. It's Seattle because Hacksaw sucks and he'll be fired. Like nothing like that where he goes in, he gets fired, and no. Let's keep him here where he belongs. Potentially make him a deal down the line. Let's keep it going. I like it. I'm all for that.
It's interesting with football. It's like the talk of the off season is all these coordinators that get head coaching interviews. With hockey, like I don't know, it's just because it's not as popular. You don't hear that news cycle as much as like this assistant coach getting interviewed. Shaw's one we got to keep an eye on for sure.
I think that's what we did like last year. It was like we heard little murmurs, and that's about all we got until whoever was interviewing him hired somebody else, and we just kind of took a exhale.
In the NFL, I'm pretty sure they have an ability to block interviews as well. Do we know if that's possible in the NHL?
I don't know, but I think if it's a lateral move, I think you can. But if it's for a head coaching job, you can't.
Head coach.
Like step up, you can't.
And I think that's the same in the NFL. You can't stop somebody's career progression, but if it's a lateral move, you can block it. Yeah.
Okay.
No. Well, yeah, guys, we're winding down here, man. Really appreciate Jack joining us for the first time. Hopefully be back again. Paul, back-to-back nights, man. I appreciate you being here. Guys, so much. So real quick before we go, Paul, tell everybody where they can find you. Then we'll kick it to Jack and we'll wrap it up.
Just on Twitter at ppollock96. That's where I'm at. I don't tweet too often, but I'm on there a lot, scrolling, watching.
Yep, Jack _HW Radio. Obviously, we have our flagship show at HW Flyers High and Wide Hockey, High and Wide Radio. We're under both on YouTube, Spreaker, Spotify. Jimmy usually does this, so forgive me. And we usually are on Tuesday, Wednesday nights. So check us out.
Hey, Jack, you already did better than me because all I remember to do is just the @FlyersHW on Twitter and the YouTube channel. So, man, you already did more than me. Pod Street Bullies, Tie My Skates. Don't forget those guys are part of the HW network. This show will be airing on 102.9 The Game. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. Really appreciate you guys. Come back next time.